Well, hello. Welcome to American Reversion. I'm Steve Smith. Uh, Happy Good Friday to those of you who are believers of the faith. I'll be talking about that in a couple of minutes. Boy, I sure kicked over a can of worms yesterday with yesterday's video about the video that I put up over on Patreon. I think a lot of you have watched that by now. If you haven't, I'd suggest you go watch it. I will put up when I put this one on Patreon, or I may have already. I think I already did. I'm sorry, I've had a lot going on today. I think I've already put two subsequent videos up over on the Patreon channel of American Reversion here. A follow-up by Dr. Artis, kind of clarifying some things that he had said on the Stu Peters show, to where he intimated that it hadn't been exactly presented the way he meant it to be. It doesn't take away from anything that he said. He meant everything that he said, but apparently Stu Peters may have marketed it a little bit differently than Artis meant it. You know, you be the judge. It's over there now, but he doesn't recant anything. As a matter of fact, he makes it a little more clear. And then another one from his own show, an artist's own show, is also up over there. For those of you who followed yesterday's and are concerned, which I don't know how you could not be concerned, it's, like I said, it's the most frightening thing, if it's true, that I have ever heard. Those are up for you over there. And by the way, there's a lot of new people. We have a lot of new people joining, not just here on YouTube. And I know that if you're on Patreon, you're watching this on Patreon, but on both the channels, both on YouTube and on Patreon. Great to have you. Hope that you enjoy it. Hope you get a lot out of it. Hope that you will participate and contribute with your comments and questions, however you do it. Over on American Reversion, I had to do one today about how to act. Kind of what Rush used to call it, the caller seminar, you know. And over there, I had to boot a bunch of people, and that's too bad because they just didn't know how to act. I'm so happy I've never had to do that on this channel, American Reversion, because I think the people here are just a slightly different cut, as it were. It doesn't mean that as a whole, because a lot of people came over to this channel from Integrative Preparedness, and there's a bunch of great folks over there. It's just bigger. It's a bigger channel. It appeals to a different base than American Reversion, and so I have to keep a close eye on stuff over there, and I bounced quite a few people who just didn't know how to behave. So I always love being here on American Reversion because you all are top notch. So that is, do you remember John the Baptist? This is appropriate. We're talking about this on Good Friday. John the Baptist and Christ himself referred to the Pharisees as brood of vipers. What does that mean? Family of snakes. Vipers, poisonous snakes. Okay, your average garden variety snake is not a viper. These are poison. They're the ones that send poison. They referred to the Pharisees as a brood of vipers because they were poisoning the people. It was a spiritual poisoning. It's interesting because that has a lot to do with what those videos are over on Patreon. And it goes, when we watch that, we see the way that our society has been poisoned. They try to poison us. They try to poison our children. And the leaders of this world, the leaders of our country, I don't know, many, you know, whatever. I can't speak to their hearts. But as a result, you know, as Christ himself said, by their fruit shall ye know them. They are a brood of vipers. And we have to understand that this is what we have to resist and fight against. So for those of you who found that important, interesting, frightening yesterday, there are follow-ups over on Patreon for you today. I want to read today, on Good Friday, we think about what happened We think about the crucifixion of Jesus. We think about the reason for it, the purpose, the necessity of it, the promise of it. It leads up to Easter. One of my kids asked me the other day, which was more important? Which is more important, Good Friday or Easter? And I told them the two cannot be separated. The two are as one. One could not happen without the other in God's plan. It was necessity. It was why Jesus was born. It was his purpose. Rather than take something from the Bible today, because this isn't the Bible channel, I do those types of things over on Stonemont Church. And I'm sorry, I forgot to put my mic on again. I hope that you've been able to hear me. Let me plug it in, just in case, because as I start reading, I may start getting quieter. And I hope that this time I plug it in well enough. It clicks. So hopefully I'm not just mouthing words to you right now. Hopefully I am, but I didn't want to take the chance that you'd be straining to hear me through the rest of this. I'm going to read an article from the Federalist. And, so many people have doubts and so many people have questions about Christ. Now, those who are believers, we don't doubt. It is a knowledge we have that non-believers can't understand. They say, well, how can you know something that you haven't seen? And, there's all sorts of examples that we can say, and that is, I know there's a wind because I can't see the wind, but I see the effect of the wind. I know that there's love. I can't see love, but I see the effect of love. And those of us who have come to the point of belief understand that. And we see the action and the proof in our own lives, not meaning that we are perfect at all, but we see God at work in our lives. And I guess I'll take this moment, even though this isn't a religious channel, to ask for God's blessing on each of you this Good Friday and Easter weekend. I hope He richly blesses your lives. For any of you who are out there that aren't really sure about this, I'm just going to read an article here that will kind of come at it from a secular point of view. Excuse me. Allergies, let me dunk this down. The title of this, and this is from the Federalist, as I say, it's from their religion writer, Scott Powell, and it said the title is Jesus Christ's Resurrection is probably the best documented historical event ever. So I'll simply read this. I doubt that I'll have to talk much about it myself. If I do, I will. The subhead is, because of their experience with the resurrected Jesus, the apostles were in a unique position, knowing with certainty that Jesus was truly the Son of God. Now the body of the article. There are many religions with different founders, prophets, and teachers going back thousands of years. But only one of them, Christianity, has a founder who professed to be the Messiah, the Son of God, who provided irrefutable proof of who He was by conquering death through resurrection. Easter is the celebration of Christ's resurrection. I want to interject here, just in case I didn't make it clear. I want to welcome anyone here listening who is not a believer, whether you are a member of another faith tradition or simply don't believe at all. I hope that you'll listen. You're welcome here. Christ is also the only person in history who was pre-announced starting 1,000 years before He was born, with 18 different prophets from the Old Testament between the 10th and 4th centuries BC predicting His coming birth, life, and death.
Hundreds of years later, the details of Christ's birth, life, betrayal, and manner of death validated those prophecies in surprisingly accurate and minute detail. 1,000 years BC, David prophetically wrote about the crucifixion of Christ at a time crucifixion was unknown as a means of execution. But every other consequential person of history came into the world to live. The death of other religious leaders such as Abraham, Moses, Buddha, Muhammad, and Confucius brought an anticlimactic end to their lives and their work. But Christ came into the world as God's Son in order to die and pay the price for man's sin. His sacrifice was the ultimate climax of his life, done for the benefit of all mankind, opening the way to eternal life in heaven for all who would believe. Of the four major world religions built on personalities, only Christianity claims its founder is still alive, having overcome death through resurrection. No Jew ever believed that, after Abraham died and was interred, his tomb ever became empty. After Buddha died, no disciple ever claimed that he or she saw or spoke to him again. As for Muhammad and his teachings that are the basis of Islam, there is no trace of this founder appearing to his disciples or followers after he died at age 61. His occupied tomb is located in Medina and is visited by tens of thousands of devout Muslims every year. Christ was unique in that he gave up his life as a sacrifice to fulfill why he came into the world. Christ set the highest standard of love possible, both in his teachings and in making the ultimate sacrifice, giving his life to rescue and save mankind. Then, to provide seeing is believing evidence, God brought Jesus back from being dead in a tomb to being alive, resurrected, so people would have living proof of who he was. The New Testament provides accounts from multiple sources who witnessed Jesus firsthand after the resurrection. In fact, Jesus made 10 separate appearances to his disciples between the resurrection and his ascension into heaven, over a period of 40 days. Some of those appearances were to individual disciples, some were to several disciples at the same time, and once even to 500 at one time. I won't interject. Particularly noteworthy is that there were no accounts of witnesses who came forth and disputed these appearances or called it a hoax, not a single one. Nor do we find any historical record of any witness accounts that were contradictory. While there are skeptics of the biblical account of Jesus, there's actually far more reliable historical evidence for his life, teachings, miracles, death, and resurrection than for any other historical figure of ancient times. Consider, for instance, that the authenticity of Alexander the Great, who was born some 350 years before Christ, is based on two original biographical accounts of his life by Arrian and Plutarch, which were written some 400 years after Alexander died. Yet nobody disputes or doubts the existence of Alexander the Great, do they? The manuscripts of Virgil and Horace, both of whom lived within a generation of Christ, were written more than 4 centuries after their deaths. The copy of works by Livy, and Tacitus on Roman history and the works of Pliny Secundus, I forget if he's the elder or the younger, on natural history were written an average some 700 years after the time of the original account. Yet no one doubts that Virgil and Horace lived and authored great poetic masterpieces. Nor do we hear questions about the authenticity and accuracy of the accounts of Livy and Tacitus in chronicling the events of the Roman emperors Augustus, Claudius, Nero, or Tiberius. About 1,000 times more manuscripts preserve the deeds and teachings of Jesus in the New Testament, about 25,000 total, than there are preserving other classical ancient works of historical figures who lived at approximately the same time, with the exception of Homer, whose Iliad is backed by 1,800 manuscripts. But that is still less than 1/10 the number of ancient manuscripts that back the authenticity of the New Testament. We know the historical Jesus mainly through 4 different accounts known as the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, not written hundreds of years later, but within a generation or two of Jesus' life. Apostles Matthew and John provided eyewitness accounts from their years of walking with Jesus as disciples. Mark also had eyewitness experience, although he was only a teenager when Jesus began his public ministry. Luke, the doctor, learned about Jesus from his friend Paul, the apostle who wrote the most letters in the New Testament. Because of their experience with the resurrected Jesus, the apostles were in a unique position, knowing with certainty that Jesus was truly the Son of God. They had been present for the life, ministry, miracles, and death of Jesus. If the claims about Jesus were a lie, the apostles would have known it. That's why their commitment to their testimony was so powerful and compelling. I don't know if they'll get into this, but remember or look up how the apostles died and ask yourself, would they have died for a lie? Would they have not recanted? Additionally, the apostles' willingness to die, I should have waited. The willingness to die for their claims has tremendous evidential value, also confirming the truth of the resurrection. No one will die for something he invented or believes to be false. Seeing, talking to, and touching the risen Jesus transformed the apostles, who then committed the rest of their lives to educate and advocate for the truth about the message of salvation through Christ. With the exception of John, who died exiled on the island of Patmos for his testimony of Jesus, the other 11 apostles, including Matthias, who replaced Judas, the betrayer of Jesus, died as martyrs for their beliefs in the divinity of Christ. It turns out that Easter, which has its ultimate meaning in the resurrection, is one of ancient history's most carefully scrutinized and best attested events. The resurrection is real and changes everything. Easter is the commemoration and the celebration of the single event that transformed the world forever. I wish you all a good Friday, a happy Easter, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.